Hello, music for your inbox, friend and families. I'm Cassia Streb, and I am a co-founder for Music for Your Inbox. And we're inviting Emily Zeller, visual artist, and Eric Lennartson, oscilloscope artist, to join us today to have a talk about their art pairing. So I'm going to invite them now to join us. Hi, Emily.
Hello.
It's great to see you, and I can see
Good
your
to see
art
you.
behind you.
Yeah, I cleaned up quite a bit and hung it
Oh,
up.
we appreciate it because we would love a tour at some point. We're just waiting for Eric to join us. There he is, like magic, which of course is not how technology works. So yeah, thanks for coming on. We paired the two, Jen and I at Music for Inbox, paired the two of you, visual artist and oscilloscope artist. And we thought having both of you on at the same time could be really helpful because there are so many connections between your work. So if it's okay, I'll just kind of volley some questions to both of you, and then if you each have stuff that you would like to say to one another, that's completely fine too. It doesn't have to be a interview type situation as much as if you have questions you've been dying to ask one another, please don't hold back. So I guess Eric, I wanted to start with you because that's sort of how the story of this pairing comes together for me as a producer. You sent us your video and said, "Hey, I think I'd be a great match for your platform," and you were right. It's it's a fantastic match. And I know that you started out as a percussionist and a composer, but I'm curious how the story of percussionist composer gets to oscilloscope artist. If you have a brief summary.
Uh, so I think in like 2017, 2018, this guy, Jerobeam Fenderson, releases an album called Oscilloscope Music. And I'm like, what the hell is this? This looks really cool. Um, and then I just was like, oh, how do I make it? And for a while he had these like very short tutorials that were like, oh, here's this program, PureData, and here's some like basic stuff you can do. But I was still getting like a bachelor's in percussion performance. So like while I was doing that on the side in my free time, I was learning how to like sort of code in PD and like how the heck does an oscilloscope work, and just over the like next several years, like 2020-ish is when I finally had like enough skill accrued that I could actually start doing something interesting. I found it way more interesting than percussion. I still do percussion, but not nearly as much as the oscilloscope stuff.
Well, I remember something you said to me when we were filming your oscilloscope video that I found interesting as a composer performer was that you were composing music and asking people to play it, and then it seemed like only a machine could actually play it properly. So then why not just ask the machine? And I, as a performer,
Yeah.
really appreciate that. I mean, if there is something that you have in your head that you want to hear that I, as a human, cannot do, by all means, like let's machine away. So, is that something that's still kind of true for you, that you're writing stuff that's sort of too
Uh,
hard for a human to play?
I'm just interested in things that are very physically challenging. Like in my pen on paper work, I do a lot of stuff with like rhythm and like very precise rhythm in such a way that it's like a computer gets it right all the time, and then the human has to try very, many, many hours to get the precision. Um, yeah, and then the oscilloscope stuff is just like, well, we're already going for extremely precise stuff. Let's just ramp it up as much as the computer can handle, and then beyond what the computer can handle. Yeah, so just fidelity in general is just something I find very interesting.
Yeah, well, it works out really well. I mean, you can see it in these oscilloscope videos that you're making on YouTube, and then of course the one that you made with us. Um, Emily, I kind of wanted to ask you a similar sort of question. We've been referring to you um, as a pen plotter artist, and you've got some beautiful pen plotted things behind you. But I realize that your portfolio extends far greater than pen plotting, and I'm curious how the pen plotter fits into your art practice.
Yeah, it started just kind of like the pen plotting stuff for me was like playing around. And so it's funny, not funny, but like interesting to me that like I'm commissioned to do like the pen plots, right? As opposed to like what I normally do or what I have done before. So, my artistic background's in photography. And, while I still very much enjoy that and do it, I think through the years I've been much more interested in how like that and art in general and technology can like make really cool stuff, and how all of that comes together. So I've done some workshops with like processing, which is what I coded these in, or P5JS, or things with Arduinos. Yeah, you can see the mess of like this other project over here.
Yeah.
And so it's all kind of like evolved and come together. And I think more now about like specific projects, and then they get realized in whatever medium they need to use. So the pen plotting stuff I was doing a lot of this creative coding work, but it just like lives in the computer, which is great and fun. But like I started seeing people making these like physical plots on Instagram, and was like, maybe I could, get a plotter and play with this. And it sort of went from there.
Great. Well, we're really happy it did, because you made us this amazing run. I have them right here because you mailed them to us. I thought I could just show a few so that
Sure.
people can get an idea of what awaits them in their mailbox if they buy a ticket. Yeah, these are original. I'm just grabbing from the pile. This is number 65. And so I don't know. I just think it's such a fascinating project, because then when I look at here's number 63. It's so different, right? But it's sort of, and that's what it's the same and different, I guess. And that's really what we were interested in with your work. So we've got, I guess I can go like this. It's a more accurate.
And looking at that, it's even so with them, like they're all from the same program, and sometimes I'll like actually change parameters, or sometimes it's just they're different because of how like the noise is reseeded each time. But like those were actually the same initial thing, and then I just like for ones where I really enjoyed how they looked, I played around with like how much they overlapped or didn't. So within the series, there's a few that I consider like twins or triplets. So because it's like the same base thing, but then they're different from there. So like that's actually interesting. You grabbed two that I would consider related.
Twins. Oh, yeah. Right. Wow, I found the siblings in the batch. Well, yeah, and it sounds as though the both of you are talking about these themes of, and I love how you're these themes of like random chance, and then machine chance, and then sort of operator error and data input. And what I like about it is that neither of you seems particularly attached to, well, this was all just the machine, or this is all me. And you're really playing on the edge of some of this is machine, some of it's me. And it sounds like you kind of don't necessarily know which bits are you or the machine. Is that accurate? Or Emily, do you want to go first, or do you feel like you have 100%?
I can go first. No, I feel like a lot of this, so like in some of the other work I do, it's playing around with like this AI stuff and GANs and generating images, and like I know enough to poke around. Like it's a wild space. And so, similarly with I guess that and this, I bring some stuff to it. Like I'm an operator who's working within it, but like I don't always know what's coming out. And so there's a lot of like massaging it and changing things and putting it around and Googling to try to get something where I'm like, okay, this is what I saw, right? Or sometimes it's just like, wow, that's not what I was expecting, but it's cool. Or sometimes I spend a day and I'm like, this is nothing. So right. For me, it's very much like just working with it, right? Like the machine is as much part of it as I am.
And Eric, do you feel like any of those comments kind of resonate with your sort of style of creating these improvisations for Oscilloscope?
The massaging of the parameters is definitely a thing. There is so much of it is just like, oh, this looks bad. Oh, this is uninteresting. And then you just like, at least, I don't know about the pen plotter stuff, but at least for the Oscilloscope stuff, a lot of it is like very precise. So just changing something by a tiny amount, it creates this drastically different thing. And I have like this notebook just full of like, for this patch, this exact sequence of numbers and relationships produces this thing. And if you don't like meet the requirements, and also if I don't write it down, I lose it. So like it's just this notebook filled with meaningless numbers for anyone other than myself.
It sounds like one of those stories of a crazy scientist who dies, and then everyone's trying to reverse engineer a formula that they were working on.
Yeah, if anyone ever tries to go through and look at my notes and my patches, good luck.
Yeah, well, I know that what you're both talking about is this idea of, or what I'm hearing is this idea of inputting the information, seeing what happens, and then making a judgment as to whether or not that is for you acceptable or unacceptable. I'm curious to know, like, I work a lot in sound with field recordings, and I tend and sort of activating the space myself. So there's an element of me, and there's an element of just what the environment is presenting itself. I tend to kind of fall in love with kind of everything, honestly. Sort of as soon as I turn on a field recorder, I tend to just sort of love, like, oh, that bird, and then that car, and then that radio went by, and then a helicopter, and I'm I mean, of course, there's ones that I'm doing what you're doing where I'm like, yeah, like, I can't use that. But I'm curious if you feel similarly, like just that you sort of fall in love with these little quirks that get presented to you, or if you're a little more cutthroat than me, maybe. Emily, do you want to go first?
Like, I guess within the series, there's a range. I mean, so there's some where like the noise is much smoother and it's very gentle and like moves around, and then I think like the ones you showed, it's not as aggressively moving, but there's like harder parts that switch. So some of it is like I'm generating a bunch, but I am choosing when I'm pressing like the S key to save off the versions that I'm making.
Right.
So yes, I mean, to some extent, I'm thinking about like what fits and is still part of the series and like pulling it or not. It wasn't, once I sort of, I guess, dialed in the code with this, it wasn't awful to play around and kind of get stuff. But absolutely in the beginning stages of everything, like, this is where I landed. I had tried other things for this project that just weren't going to be there.
I'm just gonna like squeak up two more just because it's so much fun to play show and tell on Instagram. It's a visual platform. Yeah, anyhow, these are just Emily Zeller's pen plotted prints, and I'm just one of the things that's really cool about this job of producing for music for your inbox is opening our own inbox or mailbox and just having like art show up. I've solicited, obviously, but that it was really cool to get these prints in the mail, and I think it'll be very kind of exhilarating to get one because you're sort of part of a team of like one of 130. I'm a little curious. Well, Emily, you had the option of just making one, and we could reproduce it and send it off. And I'm curious to know like what you felt like you gained from creating this series as opposed to just creating one precious print.
I mean, I think an unexpected thing I gained was that I made a series, which I just like, of course, but also I didn't realize that when I was just like, wouldn't it be neat if I complicated this? And instead of making one and then like sending it off and just having it be reprinted over and over, I made a bunch. But I think that like I could pick one and it'd be one of this code that is always changing. Every time you run it, it's different. And so, like, how do you pick one? And like, sure, like, I guess they're all representative of the code. But for me, what's so neat is like seeing these slight variances and how they come together and how they move. And so, since I was able, and I guess also because it's pen plotter art, right? If this was something that only existed in the computer, then it would have had to have been fine the other way, right?
Right.
But I had the ability to make these like separate, unique but the same objects. So I forget where the question started.
No, it's because you chose to make 130, and then Eric on the other side had to only, because we're not producing 130 oscilloscope videos, Eric. Sorry, but I'm just curious. Like, so now we know how Emily sort of came to kind of grow the idea this way, and then Eric had to shrink it down because there are infinite possibilities. How did you pick one improvisation to kind of go with?
I just it's like, oh, here's one I like. I like all of them pretty much. I mean, it's kind of impossible to pick, to be honest. So at this point, I'm just like, well, this one's good. I like this one. I think, like, Well, I guess what I'm looking for is something that's um makes the pacing make sense. Because what can end up happening is that it drones on forever in this one image. And so then maybe it's like sonically interesting, but visually you've sat on the same thing for 20 minutes. Or vice versa. The image changes a whole bunch, but you basically hear the same thing for 20 minutes. So the real challenge is finding the one that both elements seem to come together and like the pacing makes sense and um the more I practice with whatever the patch is, the easier that gets. But then all the interesting stuff of I didn't expect this to happen doesn't happen either. So it's this like balancing act of improvisation 100 is probably not that different from 80, but maybe, somewhere in like the 15 to 20 range. I sort of know what I'm doing, but I'm also getting something new and exciting each time.
So it's not, both of you are talking about the technologies that you're using, and I'm just thinking for people who are listening who may not be familiar with it. Emily, you're referring to noise, and I think you're talking about Perlin Noise. Do you want to
Try to explain Perlin Noise?
Emily's nephews, because I'm pretty much just shifting the burden onto your shoulders.
I can try.
but-
I can
okay.
try. Okay, so noise, Perlin noise is sort of like a variance of just randomness, right? So something, if you said like, hey computer, give me random numbers, between 0 and 100, it would just give you a bunch of random numbers, like truly random all over, right? And Perlin noise was named after Ken Perlin. I'm pretty sure he ended up creating it like for the movie Tron, the original Tron in like the 80s. I'm seeing nodding, so okay, good. Yeah. I'm not doing too bad. It's meant to be, the prompt's nice. It's meant to help, like it's used a lot in like terrain generation or like creating realistic textures. But so it's basically picking random points, but then interpolating between them, like making extra points kind of in between and smoothing them off is my understanding of it. So you get the noise, but it's much more gradual and smooth, and it ends up looking like something that could be vaguely organic.
Yeah, and I think that thank you very much for explaining that incredibly well, much better than I would have done. I think I think that the word random, like when we say that, like, oh, it was random or whatever, we still have like like there's still a field within which we are thinking of things being random. But when you ask them like a computer to do something random, it's truly all over the place. And so, you can say, oh, randomly generate numbers, between 1 and 30, and it might give you 30 100 times or something, like it's and you're like, no, but I wanted. And so I really see this as being kind of the artist's answer to that idea of like, make it look natural, but if it were natural, it would look unnatural. And so right, so we're obviously able to get these really cool kind of textures and that sort of basket weaving pattern. Eric, you're talking a lot about PureData, so this is your challenge.
Yeah.
But you could sort of just explain to people, maybe not what PureData is, because this is, of course, just half an hour chat, but maybe just talk a little bit about like how you build a patch, and then I'm curious to know, this is just my own self, like at what point do you just start again with a new patch, or at what point do you just sort of mess around and finesse and massage the patch that you have to get what you want?
Okay, PureData, what is it? It's a Oh my god. So for someone who knows nothing about
Nothing. Don't do nothing. I mean,
so okay, there's this guy, Miller Puckett and Max Matthews. They're very famous for like early computer music, like programming languages and how can I do real-time computer music. So instead of here's my punch cards, come back next morning and here's my music. Here's my punch cards and I get the music right now. So that's like the origins of PureData and Max MSP, which are twin programs essentially. So it's used for making electronic music in real time. There's a whole bunch of these programs now, but PureData is open source and free, and I can modify it to be however I want. So the reason I use PureData is because I created a whole series of like add-ons for PureData that make oscilloscope music easier. So that's PureData in a nutshell, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that was great. You're doing really, really well.
As far as I make a patch, when do I move on? Well, it's more of a when do I get bored? So sometimes the patch is like very specific and it does one singular thing. I'm gonna draw this sphere, and the sphere is gonna have a bunch of points that are squares, and I don't know, maybe they oscillate between some other shape. And it does like if it's something super specific like that, it's more, there's not so much music there. It's like this is more of like an image. This patch generates an image with the sounds. Something I'm working with currently has like a bazillion different things it could do. So on the other side of the spectrum, I don't think I'll ever get bored with this one. But at some point, you got to move on and do something new. I don't really have like a number to assign for how long I stay with the patch, but it's like more like am I still finding this interesting? Can I still make new things with it? Or is it time to move on and just try something else?
Great. That's super helpful. Thank you to you both for that heavy lift of technical explanations. Emily, I wanted to ask you if can we see the pen plotter? And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah. So I have you angled, so I've
ready.
cleaned this
Okay.
way. I have not cleaned the other way. So we can come this direction. And let's see, how can I angle it? I'm looking at like the side of my phone. So this is my pen plotter.
Okay.
So the company AxidDraw. I wonder if I can just like flip my. You know, oh, I can flip. This is much easier. Okay. Yeah, so AxidDraw, I mean, there's other pen plotters, and there's certainly like old ones from, you know, like when technical drawings were done and that sort of thing, but they make these, and I feel like a lot of, you know, people who are like hobbyist pen plotters or artists who are like, maybe I'll try to get into it, end up getting AxidDraws. And they're great. So really, I mean, it's just like, you know, your x-axis or your y-axis sort of thing, or whichever way it goes, and then the pen goes in here, and you know, this has a cute little servo, and so it just kind of moves around and goes up and goes down. And you know, I have the 10-plus-year-old laptop that is just essentially good to drive the pen plotter, and so I make the stuff and get it into Inkscape over here, and then just send it over to here.
Cool.
Basically. Yeah.
So the process of making this set was setting everything up, taping down your paper, and then walking away for 20 minutes, having a cup of coffee, and coming back.
Oh gosh.
Is that
yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the initial process, like, I mean, there's like the initial like coding and getting it around, and I essentially just did like the top portion, I guess, of like the because since they're like reflected on themselves. I mean, I've got like some duds back up here that like I didn't like the paper, like the pen drug or something. Something's wrong with that, basically. But so since they're like mirrored on each other, it does the top part. So I'd like process that, and then I'd take it and decide kind of like how I was mirroring it, right? Like how much overlap or not. And then once I decided that, so I scaled everything, because I kind of scaled it wrong in the code, but it was going to be easier to scale it later than to try to like rewrite it and then have the lines look different. Anyway, that got run through a Python program that helps like make the plot better. So like simplifies the lines, or like makes sure like this one's next to this one, we do them at the same time as opposed to like way later. Yeah, so once those were all generated, it was a lot of, you know, tape it down very precisely, set it up, let, you know, go do dishes, come back, you know, take it off, number it, tape it back down, go do laundry. So that was a lot of my break from work for the holidays, but it was good, right? You know, it was just I didn't know how the cats would deal with it, because I ended up taking it home in case I couldn't get into work, or, you know, we're in the COVID times, and I didn't know if I had to quarantine, so it came home. Yeah, and it was just a lot of, I don't have it running because it makes noise, which in its own way is like music, of like you hear all the servos and the, you know, different tones depending on how it's moving. But it just ran a lot for a while.
Yeah,
and it survived.
That's actually like super impressive. I feel like you've run a marathon with a pair of flip-flops. Um, Eric, I wanted to ask you a bit about your gear, your oscilloscopes. When I first saw the video that you sent to us, showing like explaining what your work was, I was under the impression that oscilloscopes were sort of precious and like you'd have one, like I'm a violist and I have a viola. I have also like a carbon fiber viola, but I don't have like 10 violas. But then when we were talking about filming the movie, you were talking about like lots of oscilloscopes that you had. And I'm just sort of curious, like, how are you picking favorites? I mean, is it, what goes into deciding, oh, I have this gig coming up or something. I'm going to pick this oscilloscope versus the other one.
Depending on the oscilloscope, it's the sharpness of the line. Also how you film it will affect the sharpness of the line, but and then the phosphor. So what the green is the electron gun on the oscilloscope is firing at the phosphor on the screen, and the phosphor will respond and light up. But different phosphors responds differently. So some people have this old video game console called a Vectrex, and it doesn't have as much bandwidth, so you can't send as crazy signals at it. But the lines are way sharper. So someone might choose a Vectrex over an oscilloscope because they want the super sharp lines and they don't need the bandwidth to draw something super complex. Since I do everything with like crazy numbers of like above 100,000 and like 10 million or whatever, I need all the bandwidth I can get. So it's all about which oscilloscope has really high bandwidth and has an extremely sharp line. But that's basically what I'm going for. How sharp is the line? And if it's like a gig, if it breaks, do I care?
Right.
So the crappiest oscilloscope with the sharpest line comes to the gig.
I see. So it's exactly like violas is what I'm getting at. I'm curious because Eric, you are a performer as well, or at least you come from a performance background. It seems to me that the oscilloscope is a very lonely instrument, in that it sort of doesn't play well with others. Is there a way for you to improvise live with other people and actually know what is going to happen? Or would you just sort of more be like, hi, this is what I do, and if you want to add sounds to me, that's fine too?
Well, in my own personal, I'm very adamant about keeping the whole 1-to-1 ratio of what you see is what you hear. There's other people where they sort of either completely remove that or they somewhere in the middle, like it's mostly related but not 100%. I would really like to keep that relationship as clear as possible. So what ends up happening is that just wall of noise is just blaring out of the speakers, and that's not so conducive for someone else wanting to play along or be a part of it.
Right. So
Because basically anything other than a very carefully curated signal is going to look crazy on the oscilloscope.
right.
So it's probably possible. I just haven't really explored it.
That's fine, and it's totally fine to be a soloist. I was just sort of curious about that shift that you've gone from playing. I mean, because a percussionist is sort of the opposite of the soloist in the classical sense.
Always something and helping other people sound good.
Right, and it's so sort of neat that you've made the shift to be like, nope, I will be doing all of the things. So okay, I'm sorry, I have a couple questions here from Jen, our other producer, so I'm just gonna glance down and read those. Eric, not to put you on the spot again, but Jen was asking when we were prepping for your video and talking about the ideas behind your work. Jen was saying like, oh, and then you said the visuals come out, and she said, oh, it's like magic, and you said actually absolutely not like magic, and really pushed back on that, and we were really happy because it's nice when someone has an opinion and draws a line in the sand, and we really, really appreciate that. So I'm curious, like how, and then Emily, you could talk about this too after, I guess, but how you feel like this idea of like coding and computer work and people describe it as magic, what comes out. What do you like what is so like what sort of makes you push up against that, Eric? What do you feel about that?
Well, I think you're giving up a lot of your own freedom by saying the computer's magic and it's just going to do what you want. Um, but just from my own limited experience of being sort of a hobbyist, amateur level coder, like I get stuff good enough to do what I want, but like I wouldn't ship this out and have millions of people use it because it's going to break instantly. But like, it's very much like spaghetti behind the scenes. So like the idea that I pick up my phone and it's just working how it's supposed to, maybe more likely is that the whole thing is a giant pile of spaghetti that's barely held together and is very easy to break. And like people spend their whole lives trying to make sure that this program never breaks, and then it'll still be breaking. So I don't know. It's just the whole idea of this computer being is this machine that's perfect, and the coder is a genius, and he will never make a mistake, is complete crap. And yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, it's not magic. So for you, Emily, do you feel like when because you're doing a similar process where you're inputting stuff into a computer program and it's generating these images, do you feel like it's magic when it comes out, or do you feel like, oh, I can see myself in this and I can also see the fragility that Eric was alluding to?
Yeah, I think there's maybe something magical about like writing code and getting visuals. I think if I understood all of the math, I'd be like, these are parameters. And I can say they're parameters, but as someone who's like, right, there's that whole like polar to Cartesian equation, and I've got to use that to make a circle. Okay, like I have to like remember geometry or like do these sorts of things. So when I get shapes and forms and stuff that looks cool out of like math and numbers, like anyone who studies math is like, of course. And I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. This is wild, right?
Right.
So, you know, it's not magic. It's very procedural, like extremely logical because it's a program. But the results are kind of cool. I mean, they're magical in the sense that like that's even possible.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, it sounds like you have a little more
I'm more willing to view it that way.
Yeah, no, and that's great. That's great. I really wanted to hear what your different opinions were with this because while you and Eric share similar processes for your art making, it's really neat to hear that you're coming from different angles about it and even what your attachment is to the final outcome. And we were just really glad that the two of you agreed to, I mean, not necessarily work together, but to have your work paired together and to feel like I feel like as a curator and a producer of this that I mean, I've seen Eric's video and I have seen Emily's art and like the postcards that we're sending out, and I feel like they're really informing one another, and I feel like it's making me think a lot about machines differently and a lot about seeing the human interaction with the machines. So thank you for that. Were there any things that you two felt like asking one another, or I don't want to force you to, but
I have a
do you have
question.
any?
So I kind of understand your process in PureData, but only a little bit. And so I also like the person you mentioned that you found his like how to do oscilloscope like audio drawing stuff. I've seen those. Like I think I'd watched too many Flopatron videos, and then YouTube was like, "Do you want to watch this instead?" I've never tried it, but so coming into it, do you feel like you approach it more with like an idea for visuals, or an idea for what you want it to sound like, or an idea of like what kind of like code you want to try playing with? Like what's your typical starting point?
All of the above. Sometimes one of the more interesting ways to start is to like sometimes I'll sketch something down on a piece of paper, some image that I think will be interesting, and then try and reverse engineer what code might produce that. Sometimes since I'll just start throwing stuff on the screen and see what my weird spaghetti produces. That's probably the most interesting one. As far as like sounds, I just have like a general like noisy aesthetic that I'm going for. Yeah, like the sounds At first they came first, but now the sounds are secondary. Not by much, but for sure it's visual first, and then just behind it does it sound interesting as well.
That's really neat. It sounds like you've moved from the world of identifying as just a composer and sound person to kind of maybe seeing the other side of it, being visual, the other side.
Yeah.
Eric, did you have anything you wanted to ask Emily about pen plotting or art in general?
I mean, I'm just like, so essentially the pen plotter, you're giving it just like some XY information and it draws the line. But like, it seems to me that it's on like a basic level, it's essentially the same thing as the oscilloscope, as in like I could give you the same, instead of sending you an audio signal of XY, if I sent you something that was just like, I don't know what the opposite of an audio signal would be, but not that, you would produce the same image, right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know how it would translate, but I think I even watched like the start of your video that was like, "What is oscilloscope music?" And you're making a circle, right? And it's just like, oh, like cosine A, sine A, like that's
Yeah.
how I'm drawing the circle to put the noise into it. So like, while you're like, I could recognize parts of kind of what you were doing and how there's overlap. Yeah, I have no idea how it would actually translate, but I also feel like it's possible.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be some kind of like pen pal situation that can happen where, but I mean, I know what you're saying is like, I don't know what the information you'd have to send would be, but like, could Emily send Eric visuals that would turn into sound and then vice versa?
I mean, one of the, when I was initially learning to code, maybe you're familiar, Emily, with Daniel Shiffman. And
Yeah, Coding Train. He's
yes,
amazing.
I love Daniel Shiffman. Daniel Shiffman is the man. Anyways,
Absolutely.
I learned so much from him. Continue to learn so much from him. One of the like exercises I will do for myself, not as much anymore, that I've kind of figured things out a bit, but like initially, was take something he made in processing, make it work on the scope.
Okay.
And essentially what ends up happening is the peculiarities, oh wow, of the scope means that I have to like kind of adjust things a bit, but like the underlying math and like logic is essentially untouched.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, I'm doing this in processing, right? Like, and yeah, for anyone who's like curious at all about creative coding, Daniel Shiffman is just phenomenal. Such a good instructor, like lively, knows what he's talking about, makes it accessible. Huge plug for Daniel Shiffman. But yeah, I mean, if you were able to like kind of go from his videos and turn it into that, like, then there'd be some massaging of it to get it back, I'm sure, but like, seems doable.
Yeah.
And then now I'm thinking about like how it would sound, right? Because it would sound a certain way in your oscilloscope, but like the servos inside the pen plotter are also gonna like, they make sounds, that could be music. Like I haven't tried recording anything, but it's interesting, which makes me also think like, has anyone tried like writing music for those, or like 3D printers, or like, anyway. Maybe musicians, you might know more of that, right? I've just kind of thought about it while it's been like running.
Well, I mean, you can certainly turn on the voice memo recorder on your phone while the pen plotter is running. Do you know what I'm saying? Like as your very primary recording device, just see if you listen back later if it's something that's interesting. Yeah, I like this. It starts to sound a little like when you type sentence into Google Translate and then you just keep sending it into different languages and different languages kind of thing. And I'm just curious, like, if we're just iterating around and around again, what would end up coming out after, 3 or 4 times translated. Yeah, well, anyhow, I know that when we first were talking about, which visual artists to pair with this video, people were saying, like, why don't you just take a still from Eric's video? Which is totally possible, but it's just so much richer and way more interesting when you have another artist and another point of view for the same thing. So thank you, Emily, for really, really enhancing this video. It's coming together really well. All right, so thanks to Emily and to Eric, and I will see you on the internet.
Bye. Thanks for
Bye.
hosting.